listening to the Unleash Greatness podcast with your host, Jonathan Mitchell. The best in personal, emotional, spiritual, and business development.
Well, good day, good morning, good afternoon, night, whatever it is I, Jonathan Mitchell. This is Unleash Greatness podcast. You can find all things that I do or my team on unleashg.com. That's unleash, the letter G.com. You can find a history of the podcast or blog posts or coaching or whatever it is you want to find out. We got it there. Today is book review day. I'm going to go over one of my favorite books, which is called Leadership and Self-Deception by the Arbinger Institute. Very, very good book. Today's podcast is sponsored by naturalmedicinemamas.com. Any help or products or advice around natural or alternative medicine for men, women, and children. They got some amazing stuff, and again, I would recommend you guys go check it out. Today, let's get going with the book review. Again, Leadership, Self-Deception. This is I, Jonathan Mitchell. Super excited to share with you, so hold on with us. Let's get going. All right, so I hope you've been tuning in the rest of this week. So again, I'm going to quickly review for those who may be listening in the first time. Monday is interview day. Going to pick some amazing guests that come in and talk to me about random subjects from the subjects we actually talk about of health, wealth, relationships, and self-expression. Tuesday is MBA Musings Day, so I get to talk about my experience with the MBA program. Today is book review day. I get to pick a book that I love or have been suggested to read and do a review on it. Tomorrow is story time. I get to talk about some stories I have or I found from friends or online. And then lastly is Friday or Spiel Day. So today is, if you have not read it, is called Leadership and Self-Deception by the Arbinger Institute. So it's a group of people, business consultants, emotional health people to get together and put together some content around leadership and just how they perceive leadership should be done. Some very intriguing out-of-the-box thinking. And it's funny I bring up out of the box because this book is all about being out of the box as far as your relationships and how you experience other people. So the premise of this book, it goes through in a story form, trying to suggest and teach how to have out-of-the-box relationships, meaning their definition of being in the box in a relationship is you treating someone like an object as opposed to treating them like a person. And so when you're in the box, you don't care about the other person's values or opinions or thoughts or any of that kind of stuff. When you're out of the box, you look at them as a human being, as a functioning, breathing other person with feelings and thoughts and hopes and dreams, and you look at them in a different place. And they also talk about the self-betrayal or self-deception, which is where you don't think you have that problem, and being self-aware enough to know that there's some things you need to change and understand that we as humans, when we get into the fight or flight mode, it's very natural of us to go into protection mode and to start protecting ourselves as opposed to looking at the other person and what they're going through. So like usual, I'm going to try to read out of a couple of places. I'm going to kind of jump around here. So since we just talked about self-betrayal or self-deception, I'm going to read to you what they define as self-betrayal. Self-betrayal is an act contrary to what I feel I should do for another is called an act of self-betrayal. So self-betrayal, as they say, is the most common thing in the world. As an example, they read it in this book, they just say, yesterday this person was in Rockefeller Center in New York. I got into the elevator, and as the door started to close, I saw someone scurry around the corner and race towards the door. In that instant, I had the sense I should catch the door for them, but I didn't. I just let it close. My last view of his outstretched lunging arm. Have you ever had that type of experience? So that's an example. When in your life, when have you had times when you've had a thought of doing something for someone else and you didn't do it because of fear of being with someone you don't know, of fear of being judged by other people for being helpful? There's a lot of times when we hold back from doing something nice to someone else because for whatever reason, because we just don't give in to that feeling of, helping someone. That is self-betrayal. And that's something they talk a lot about in this book. is being willing to look at and pay attention to those inklings when you feel like you should be thinking about or doing something for someone else. So another part they talk about, and the reason why it's called leadership and self-deception. So the box, when you're inside of the box, you're not able to lead because you see people as objects instead of people. You can't encourage the heart. You can't inspire the mind when you're treating someone like an object or just another person to do a certain task, and that's all they're there for. When you get outside of the box and you look at someone and you want to inspire their mind, warm their hearts, and get people's involved on a deeper level, then you're able to do something and inspire and to choose to help them become better as a result of that. They always say that there is there's a choice that we have in between self-betrayal, self-deception, and going into choice of doing for something else or for someone else. So let me give you another real-time example from the book. So they talk about how we sometimes as humans, we start to betray ourselves or betray a thought to do something kind for someone else, and then we start to justify the betrayal in order to, make ourselves feel better about ourselves. So as an example, this couple in here, this guy who's going through this training, the whole book is about this guy getting this new job and getting some training from this guy, and his whole part of his training is having the soft skills in order to become a good leader. And he's talking about the self-deception and being out of the box, and he's trying to apply it into his own life. And so he goes home, and his wife at home has this, brand new baby, and the baby obviously is not sleeping all the way through the night. And so they both go to bed, and the baby starts crying. And the first thing this guy does is start going into the box. He has a choice, and he goes, okay, so the feeling I'm having is that I should go take care of the baby and let my wife sleep. Right? That's what he's saying. Instead of that, he starts to justify himself and saying he ignores the feeling of taking care of the baby and letting her sleep, and starts thinking to himself, I had a long day today. I have another day tomorrow. I got to do all this stuff. Like, I should just ignore the baby and pretend like I'm asleep and let her do it. And so he didn't. He ignored the feeling and started getting more and more irritated, saying, well, I can't believe she's not getting up to do this. She should be serving me and blah, 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 and started getting all upset about her not doing something he was expecting her to do. That's one option. The other option is he chooses into the feeling, and then he does what he's supposed to do, takes care of the baby, and just takes care of it. So again, the choice you have is having a feeling to do something good. The one option is to betray that feeling, and then again, what usually happens is we start to justify that feeling by saying, that this person is lazy, this person is all kind of blah 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 blah. Like, I'm going to read a couple of these things just so you can kind of hear in the context of the story. So again, this VP is trying to teach this new leader of how to be a leader in their context, in their culture. And so he talks from his first point of view, is just saying, this is an experience I went through with my wife and then baby. Right. So he goes, now in this moment, as I'm lying there listening to our wailing child, how do you imagine I might have started to see and feel and think about my wife? And so this new leader says, well, she probably seemed kind of lazy to you, I said. Okay. So lazy. And then, so he starts writing things down. And then the new leader says, unconsiderate, insensitive, unappreciative of all you do. I just started tagging her as all these things. And he said, now the battle is, again, the point is that, is she really asleep? Is she faking it? Is she pretending to sleep? And so he just put down, maybe she's just a faker just trying to play games with you or something like that. So maybe she was just asleep. Maybe the option is she was actually asleep, not faking it, not inconsiderate, not any of this stuff, but she was actually asleep because she was exhausted. So again, what option is it, and how do you feel about this person in this situation? So again, using this very specific example of this husband and wife, and how this husband wakes up, not knowing if she's awake or not, trying to decide what he's going to do, having his argument in his head, he starts tagging his wife as just asking the questions like, if, let's just say for argument's sake, that his wife is awake and that she was just listening to the baby just cry, what kind of mom would that make her? And obviously the answer is a pretty lousy one. So what kind of wife does that make her? Okay, again, it's inconsiderate, insensitive, lazy, all this stuff. So you started to make these people a lousy wife, lousy mom, faker, insensitive, all these things to make this person a horrible, horrible person. Now, as the VP stepped back and just said, okay, listen, what I could have done is just vilified her and made her the most awful, horrible person, when in actual real life, I know that this is not her, right? So technically what I'm doing is I'm justifying my self-betrayal, and I start to see her as the person who's hurting me. And I started to see myself, this is him talking. He said, not only did I start calling her names, but after betraying myself, I started to see myself as the victim, as the poor guy who couldn't get the sleep that I needed. So I was the victim. I was the one who was hardworking. I was the one who's doing everything right, and she's the one who's making the mistakes and making all the problems and all that kind of stuff. So the interesting thing here is being very aware of what you're going through, and being aware that, number one thing is, again, on the scale, you look at yourself as the victim, hardworking, that you're important, that you're sensitive, you're the good dad, you're the good husband because you do all this stuff, and she should be the one to take care of the baby but she's not, because she's lazy and faker and lousy mom, lousy wife, blah, 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 blah. It makes the other person the bad person, and it makes you the good person, and it makes you, again, vilify the other person. So again, I'm going to read over again what they say about self-betrayal. Self-betrayal is an act contrary to what I should feel I should do. And then 2, when I betray myself, I begin to see the world in a way that justifies my self-betrayal. So my thoughts and feelings will begin to tell me that I'm justified in whatever I'm doing or failing to do. And I want to just examine for a second, or he said I should want to just examine for a moment the self-betrayal. So the whole point of this book is just to first off recognize when you're justifying, to catch yourself when you betray yourself, that when you start to justify. And the number 3 thing is, when you see a self-justifying world, your view of reality becomes distorted. And when it becomes distorted, what that means is you start to blame the other people, someone else. And so there's no control that you can have to make things better or not, because again, you're the victim, you're putting power into someone else, and you're not, self-betrayal is again when you blame someone else. And that step of blaming someone else, you put yourself into the box. And then when you put yourself into the box and you start to blame other people and attack other people, you naturally put them onto the defense, and they get in their own box as well. And it just becomes this blame game where they just go back and forth just about getting inside the box and being defensive, as opposed to, getting out of the dang box. So as a result of people being in the box, some of the things they talk about are a result of being in the box, being defensive, blaming other people, which is lack of commitment, lack of engagement, conflict, lack of motivation, stress, poor teamwork, lack of trust, lack of accountability. Like, I could go on for a long, long, long time of how many things are a result of being in the box and just, blaming other people for the things that are going on, as opposed to taking ownership of your own stuff. So a couple things that does not work in the box, like for instance, when you try to change others, when you're doing your best to cope with others, like here's some 4 things. So communicating doesn't work well in the box because again, you're in the blame game. Leaving the situation doesn't help. Doing your best to cope doesn't help, and trying to change the other person does not help. Or implementing new skills or techniques. You could have the best, coolest skill or technique, and it still is not going to help you at all. You can even change your behavior, but if your mindset and where you're coming from is the same, it's not going to let yourself out of the dang box. So again, the whole point of this book is to say to yourself, how do I get out of the box and to treat people in a way that gets me out of the blame game, and to get myself away from the self-betrayal of not listening to my first thought in the first place. One of the biggest tools they suggest is to be aware of the box in the first place. And Obviously, you don't want to use the verbiage and the language of the box because most people aren't going to have any idea what you're talking about. But it's becoming aware of being in the box with someone else when you start to blame someone else and being able to choose out of it. So as an example, they give some steps or some things you can look at, what they call another chance, because it's very easy to jump inside the box and go 4 or 5 steps down. You start to blame other people and you start justifying and all this other stuff. But as you start to become more aware of when you're getting triggered or emotionally high and you jump into the box and blame someone else, you become you become better at recognizing earlier in the process when you're in the box, you can start stepping out of it faster. So, again, let's just kind of review a couple things. Self-betrayal leads to self-deception in the box, meaning you jump in and you're attacking other people. When you're in the box, you cannot focus on the results of what you're trying to get. Your influence and success will be based out of getting out of the box. And as you get out of the box, you cease resisting other people and what they're going through. So a couple things about this. You don't want to try to be perfect, but you do want to try to progress and be better. Again, don't use the words like the box. Most people don't have any idea what that means, but you want to use the principles of getting out and being aware of where people are at. Don't look for other people's boxes. This is a big one in the book. Don't focus on someone else's box. Focus on your own and getting outside of your own self-betrayal. Don't accuse others of being in the box. Again, do try to stay out of the box yourself. This is all about what you do with what you have. Don't look at other people. It's about what you can do. Do apologize anytime you start to blame or to look at someone else as the problem. Always focus on you and saying, what can I do about this? What is it that you can focus on what you can do right? Don't focus on what others are doing wrong. Focus on what you can do right. And then again, don't worry whether other people are helping you. Focus on whether you are helping other people. So again, the energy is all about becoming better at recognizing when, number one, you're getting triggered, when you feel like that things aren't going your way, when you start feeling the blame. Those are the times you start to ask yourself, am I looking for someone else to do something for me? Or am I able to look outside of myself and see what can I do for other people? So, very intriguing book. Again, Arbinger Institute, Leadership and Self-Deception. It's in a story form, a lot of cool principles. I hope you guys take a chance to read it. It's amazing. So check it out. Again, this is Jonathan Mitchell, UnleashG.com for Unleash Greatness. Thank you again for listening in. We'll talk to you tomorrow.